Thanks for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm amazed at the speakers before me and amazing messages, and I hope that I can share with you some things, personal things that have changed my life, have shaped what we're doing in the school system and the community, and some thoughts about the future. Connecting the dots is a perfect segue for what I do. I'm an educator, and I truly believe, and you saw the previous slide about education and all that, there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of debate, what's good and bad. There's no real solid answer. I don't have a PowerPoint to give you all the answers. I know Brian sitting here, Brian Flonis from Wenatchee, another place, we struggle with the answers, but we all want one thing. We want what's best for our kids, because you go into the profession because you love kids. And that's the heart of the enterprise. And so connecting the dots to talk a little bit, I'm supposed to talk about the Cashmere Cares initiative that we're gonna launch. But to do so, I need to connect the dots a little bit for you and personal, and then to our community, and then maybe some challenges that we faced, and then ultimately then how do you get to a place where you're reflective and you grow and you get better and you help kids. And so first of all, for me, I grew up in a family of educators. I grew up in Cashmere. I was raised in Cashmere. I had an awesome experience. The care and the community's commitment to kids in the school is overwhelming. My dad was the superintendent, which wasn't always the best thing when you got in trouble, but the bottom line was I was raised around a bunch of educators. My brother's now been a superintendent for 22 years in a school district, Nooksack Valley School District. My dad was a superintendent for 30 years. And just from an early time, I want to teach. And when I taught for a while, and I thought, you know what, if I can impact 25 kids, what about a building? I was naive, probably ambitious, and said, what if I can impact an entire building? And eventually I said, what about entire school system? And, I really believe kids are at the heart of the enterprise. I believe, and I want what's for my kids, my 4 kids, our 4 kids, I want the same for the other 1,400 kids in Cashmere. Every kid that walks through our door is a gift. Every kid that walks through our door has a unique ability, and it's not always about, don't get me wrong, I'm all for high standards, college and career ready and all that, but sometimes what about the whole kid? What kind of things do they come to school with us? What kind of challenges do they have? What kind of needs do they have? But every kid has a unique skill and ability. It might be the best welder, it might be the best trumpet player, might be a singer, might be an Eagle Scout, might be an athlete. That's okay too, but you know what? Every kid needs to be honored. That's a challenge, because you try to honor and meet all the needs and still raise the bar. So we got to raise the bar. We got to implement new standards, new assessment system, new evaluation system, and compete globally, and then be present for kids. And I'll tell you what, that's a challenge. In 2004, I had the opportunity to move back home with my family, and the reason why we wanted to do it, we wanted our kids to be raised in this valley. I didn't just say Cashmere, I said our valley. It's a wonderful place to raise kids. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but our 4 kids, we wanted them to have the experiences, opportunities that we had. We wanted them to be known, we wanted them to be held accountable, and we wanted them to be raised and promoted for their future as a community. And our community in Cashmere, you know what, it isn't perfect, but I'll tell you what, the thing that makes it unique and special is because at the heart of the community is kids in the school. And I could go on and on how they respond, but the reality is time and time again, if a kid's in need, a family's in need, that's the priority, and it's not perfect. I will tell you now, I'm going to share something with you that I have not talked about because it's very difficult for me to talk about, and I'll say a little prayer in my mind here to get through this part, but a couple years ago, we went through some challenging times. Specifically, we lost 2 kids. And it just devastated the families, our student body. We have students here today, principals, staff, the community, and personally, it rocked the core of what I believe, what I just shared with you. I could not believe that we had lost 2 kids. And the bottom line is that I thank God for the strength and support of a strong, loving wife. But I'll tell you, that's at the core of what we're about as kids. And since that time, you go through a lot of reflection and a lot of soul searching And I found is that, you know something? I'm proud about our programs. I'm proud that our high school principal sitting back here, Tony Boyle, can name almost every kid in the school. I'm proud of the student assistant teams and the safety net and all the things we have probably in common with Wenatchee, Eastmont, and other schools, but the reality is, can we get better? Doesn't mean what we've done before is not good, but you have to ask yourself, key concept number one, better versus different. Do you do the same thing better, or at times do you need to do things differently, or do you have to do both? And the reality is, I think it's a combination. There's some great traditions in Cashmere, time-honored traditions that I think need to stand the test of time. My dad used to say, the key, he gave me two bits of advice, but one of them was, as a superintendent, always surround yourself with better people than yourself. And my brother Mark, who's a superintendent up north, says that's pretty easy for me to do. But the bottom line is that I believe in our staff, I believe in the programs, but we have to look at the future because our future is changing. We have to serve the kids we have, not who we had. And I'm not going to, very clearly, no excuses, but our poverty since I've been there has doubled. We're about 60% free and reduced lunch. In Cashmere, Washington right now, we have 31 kids that are deemed to be homeless. Okay? We have increased second language needs. The bottom line is those kids need to have the same opportunities when they walk through our doors, the same hope and optimism, because you know what? They're going to meet our expectations. And I'm not talking about the ones you saw drawn on the board. I'm talking about the whole kid, because our charge is to ensure a quality education for every kid. I didn't say provide, I said ensure. Different than when most of us went to school, because it was a sorting machine. You know, I'd ask Dr. Sherrod, he'd probably tell me what the percentage of dropout rates 30, 40 years ago. We can't lose any kid. And so we have to look about how we expand partnerships, how we do things differently, and at times, it is doing things differently. I know this, though. What's on our plate, and I say this often to our staff, is a second concept, and that's autonomy versus excellence. We ask classroom teachers, you cannot teach in isolation. And so you have to open your doors and collaborate, just like you saw. Kids have to collaborate. Principals in our district have to collaborate. Buildings amongst each other. School districts have to collaborate. And we have to find ways to expand our collaboration with our community and our partnerships. And again, our landscape's changing. And so I was on a trip this last summer, and I went up to visit my brother up at his school district. And we were talking, and I said, you know, he brought up the idea of, hey, they're doing a new initiative in their school district where they've partnered with their churches, strong faith-based group. I said, well, how do you do that, church and state and school? And he says, great question. Churches over here, their first charge is not to convert. Their first charge is to love. Our first charge isn't test scores and assessment. Our first charge is kids and loving kids. Where do we intersect? So they got people together and said, what can we do around collective commitments to make life better for kids? Wow. Now we're looking at not only can we build upon better versus different, because I'm not negative at all to what things we have in place. We have great programs in place, but how can we get better? And so when I got back, I started thinking about this thing and this Cashmere Cares. How might we broaden out and branch out? And our service clubs, Lions Club, you know, they were doing a lot of things. They have a Friday morning breakfast 3 or 4 times a year. You know what they do right before holidays? Is they go into schools, because not every kid goes home to a perfect place for a holiday. Christmas break, spring break, and others are not necessarily a break for everyone. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying is what we do is they have a Friday morning breakfast. You know what they do? They serve food to every kid and say, I care about you. That's the last message they hear when they leave. We have a Rotary Club, Service Above Self, that does immense things for our community. Kiwanis, I can go on, booster clubs. But the reality is we have a Downtown Business Association that's actively involved, that we haven't even begun to tap the resources. So what if thinking outside the box, no excuses, not trying to stay the same, honor what we've done, but yet look at the future. And the reality is, what happens if we created a program, Cashmere Cares, around 4 guiding principles or questions? These collective commitments for the community. And it's not meant to be an exhaustive list, it's a starting point. Number 1 is no kid cold. Simple thing. Before we even get to the challenge of what you saw on the whiteboard there, no kid cold. I've already had a service club come up and say, we want to have hats, gloves, and boots for any kid that needs them in the district. We'll provide them, period. No kid hungry. No kid hungry in our district. So the reality is, we've already had a ladies group from Monitor. How do we create backpacks of food? I know Wenatchee does that in other districts, but how do we do backpacks for kids with food? But how do we not embarrass them, humiliate them, make them feel less than, so it's anonymous? But how do we do that? How do we expand Friday morning breakfasts? Because you know what? We have a lot of these things in place, but how do we pull them together within where the school's the hub and it's organized? So one goal, no kid cold, no kid hungry. Every kid with a mentor. Okay, now we're going to go a little deeper. What about after-school programs? What happens if a church or other group want to have an after-school program within that intersect collective commitments around kids? You got to honor that. But what happens about after-school programs? What about big buddies, lunch buddy programs? What happens if we've already had a service club say, we want to initiate a lunch buddy kids program in our elementary? Okay, and the last one was we want every kid to be literate. Okay, so no kid hungry, no kid cold. Okay, every kid literate, every kid with a mentor. Now that's a challenge. We have a lot of kids that come to us with a lot of issues, but now we're at the academic core and believing that they can have a successful future. Every kid, not just some. I don't say all because that means, okay, we're going to give it to all, if you get it, not. We really have to know who the kids are, and we have to help them. The reality to do that, we need to extend learning. So how do we partner with business where we are actually extending learning? What happens when kids go to work with their parents, and that shift starts at 6:30 in the morning? Can we work with that business to open our doors even earlier? Can we work with the business to do night classes or other business organizations so we can have adult literacy classes that their kids are with them side by side? Can we do that? And the answer, I believe, is yes. But I'm telling you, I'll go back to losing 2 kids. That wasn't the genesis of this whole thing. But I'll tell you what, at the core of something, that's what we're about as kids. And we have a staff full of people and other students that love kids and are present. But the reality is we don't know the whole picture. We don't. And I'm not here to defend or anything. I hope you don't get that message because I'm optimistic. I have to have hope and confidence for the future, and so does our staff, and so does our community. But I do believe in Cashmere. I believe in our staff. I believe in our school system. But most of all, I believe in our kids. Thank you.